friends, welcome back to my podcast, Strawberry Milkshake. I hope you are having the most wonderful of days. And in this week's podcast episode, I'm going to be reading and reviewing a book that I got sent from an author named Ben Guterson. My last episode of last year was explaining everything you can expect for season 2 of my podcast, which is also basically what you can expect in the year 2023 for my podcast. So if you have not watched that, be sure to go check that out. But basically in that episode, one of the main things I talked about was how in this year, or season 2 of my podcast, I'm going to be reading and reviewing books that are sent to me by authors. So like I said, this is the first episode where I'm doing this, and I am so excited. I'm over the moon happy, and I'm just so thrilled to be doing this. So first off, thank you so much for everyone who is listening to this. Thank you for everyone who is supporting me on my podcast journey and is continuing to support me. And a huge thank you to Ben Guterson for sending me your book, and I am just so excited to read it and review it. So let's go ahead and begin. So first off, let me just say the book is called The Einsteins of Vista Point, and this is by Ben Guterson. He is the author of the Winter House series, which you guys know I read the first Winter House book. I loved it so much. I would not stop talking about it. I loved it so much. I'm looking forward to reading the other 2 books in his trilogy very soon. So Ben, I loved your Winter House series, and I am looking forward to reading the next 2. But let's go ahead and get started with The Einsteins of Vista Point. So I just got it in the mail a few days ago, and I'm going to start reading it. Let me just say before I begin with that whole reading and reviewing thing, the cover is so pretty and so different than Winter House. I know, Ben, you told me that you were trying to go on a more serious tone than Winter House and not repeat the same thing you did for your other trilogy, and I think you are doing a fantastic job at that. It already gives off such different vibes, but like in the best way ever. It looks so different but so wonderful, so intriguing. The cover is really great. It looks like it's going to be a great novel, and I am just so excited to start reading it. So let me stop talking about how excited I am and actually start reading it. So like I said, I just got it a few days ago, so I'm going to go ahead and go read a little bit right now, and then I will update you guys as soon as I have read more. So I will be right back, and I'm going to read a little bit. Okay, you guys, I'm back. It is the next day, and I'm currently on page 98, which is chapter 11. And before I give the whole review, let me just say I already love the book so much. A few things I just want to say that I noticed right off the bat was, first of all, starting from literally the beginning of the book, I loved that there was a page where it had all of the chapter names and the page numbers. As a reader, I really love when authors do that, when they put that into their book. I think it is so wonderful because for me, sometimes I only have limited time to read, so I look at how long the chapter is, and instead of flipping through the pages, that beginning page really helps me know if I can read the whole chapter or not, and other things like that. But I really appreciate that page at the beginning. I think it is so wonderful and will prove useful to so many readers like me. And another thing I liked right from the beginning was a map. I love books, especially fantasy and adventure books, which is what the Einsteins of Vista Point is. I love when they put maps at the beginning of their books. It really helps bring the story to life and helps me imagine it in my brain of this whole world that the author is creating. So I loved the map so much. Not only did it help me imagine everything even more, but it was also to where whenever they would name a certain location, I would be like, oh, that's right here on the map. And it was really nice and really fun. I loved that I just got to basically see everything that the characters were seeing. I went along with them on their journey, and I loved that so much. That is one thing I really appreciate and love in a good book. So I really like that little detail a lot. It's not necessarily something that a lot of authors do, but the few times the authors do it, I really love it and appreciate it. Another thing I want to point out that I loved from the beginning was the chapter names. When I was looking at the contents page, I loved the names. I thought they were so creative. I started reading them in advance, and I got so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, these are the best names ever. I think it really helps define and kind of get you ready for what's going to happen in that chapter, and that is something that I love in chapter names. So I think the author Ben Guterson did a wonderful job at getting the chapter names right. I think it was so beautifully well done, and I like that a lot. And I liked the names just so much. I cannot describe to you guys how much a good chapter name will do to me. Like, it sometimes honestly can bring my star rating up a star or half a star because I love those elements, like the page where it tells you the chapter names, the map, the chapter names themselves, themselves. Just like all of those little things can add up, and that is how I identify my star rating at the end. So all of those elements are just things that I noticed right from the beginning before I even started reading the book, which is so fantastic, and I love that so much. But now let's move on to a little bit about what I've read so far. So I've read the first almost 100 pages. I love it so much. The first 2 chapters are already so intriguing. I also like that the chapters are short. They're not too short, not too long. They're a good length to where you can actually read a chapter, sit down, read a chapter, and not be committed to reading for an hour straight. I love that. But like I said, just from the beginning, it is so intriguing. There's already things that are going on that you don't know the answers to that you want to keep reading so you can find out the answers. And I think that is such a wonderful thing that Ben did. He really helped keep the readers intrigued and wanting more, which is something that I love and really appreciate from authors. And since I am almost halfway through, around the halfway point, I love the illustrations. There are illustrations every once in a while throughout the story, and it really just helps bring the story to life, as well as the map at the beginning. Pictures just really help bring the story to life. Of course, you yourself already have an image in your mind if the author describes it, but really when there's a picture, it just helps clear everything up and you know exactly what the author was trying to convey. And I love pictures so much because, like I said, some parts that there are pictures are just so magical and needed a picture, and it was so beautiful. The illustrations were wonderful, so I loved those a lot as well. But yeah, guys, as of right now, that's kind of the update I have for you. I am loving it so far. It's so wonderful, and I'm really intrigued, and I really want to finish it. And I have a lot of unanswered questions, so I hope that they get answered as I get closer to finishing the book. So I'm gonna go finish reading right now, and then I will update you guys as soon as I have another update. Guys, I finished the book. I finished the Einsteins of Vista Point, and I loved it so much. It was wonderful. Before I give you my star rating, let me go ahead and do my final quick review. So first off, it is such a wonderful book. Like I said a little while ago, right from the get-go, it has you intrigued and just wanting to read more, which is something I really love and appreciate in a book. I think Ben Guterson did such an amazing job at keeping you intrigued, not only at the beginning, but throughout the whole story. I never wanted to put the book down because there was always something going on and some type of question that I wanted answered. So it was so hard to put the book down the few times I did. I read it so quickly. I think I read it in 2 days, which is pretty quick. Usually it takes me a week to read a book, but I read this one in 2 days, which is really crazy. But I loved it so much, and it really shows that of how quick I read it. So it was a wonderful read. I really loved it a lot. And I know a little while ago I also said a few of the key elements that I loved that Ben Guterson put into his story. Another one that I forgot to mention that kind of became more evident later on in the story was Morse code. In the story, Morse code is kind of a significant part in the story. Not significant, but it definitely has a pretty good-sized role in the story, and I loved that so much because I can kind of relate with that. I know last year I did an episode about Morse code because I learned Morse code. I know the whole alphabet, and I thought it was so cool that Ben Guterson decided to incorporate Morse code into his middle grade book. I thought that was so wonderful. If I hadn't already known Morse code, I would definitely be very interested in learning Morse code. So not only is it a wonderful story, but I think it's also a wonderful learning opportunity for kids or adults that read this. But I really loved that there was Morse code. It made me feel almost connected to the book in a way, and there were certain dates in the book that they were talking about that also really related to me in my personal life. So that was also very special. I know that wasn't intentional or anything, but there's always parts in a story that the author does to try to connect with the readers, and I think that's a wonderful gift that authors have, to where it makes you feel almost special in a way, to where you can relate with something that is going on in their story, which is just a wonderful feeling. I loved that so much. And now for a little synopsis of what you can expect in the book The Einsteins of Vista Point by Ben Guterson. It's about a little boy named Zach, and he is the main character. He's the protagonist. Right from the beginning, you kind of realize that something's a little off with him, and you later find out that it's because their whole family is going through something very sad, but very realistic and relatable for a lot of people. They lost a family member, and throughout the whole entire story, it talks about them dealing with it, and I think that's a really wonderful thing. It's a really good topic to have in a middle grade book because this is real life. Yes, it was fantasy, it was adventure, it was wonderful, but it also has some real life elements of things that actually happen in real life that kids or adults or whoever is reading it know about, and I think that's a wonderful thing to put into books, especially for young kids kids that might not have dealt with that yet to kind of get familiar with it for when it does happen to them. And I think that Ben Guterson did a wonderful job at really connecting you to the characters. I felt bad for the characters whenever they were hurting or mourning for their loved one. I felt for them. I wanted to go comfort them because it was so powerful. And that definitely does play a big role in this story, which I really liked and enjoyed. But basically, like I said, it's about a little boy named Zach, and he especially is the one that took the death the hardest. And the whole family decided for a fresh start to move somewhere new, to get away from the memories that they had with that person that died. So they go out to this place and they buy this house. And the parents' goal is to make the house a bed and breakfast, which is such a cute goal. I love that as well. And basically, throughout the time of when they're trying to transform the house into a bed and breakfast, the kids go adventuring on their own a few times, and one day, Zach finds a friend. This friend becomes very special to Zach in a wonderful and beautiful way, and it is just such a wonderful mystery adventure, family, kind-hearted, all-around wonderful book, and I really, really enjoyed reading it. And I just think that Ben Guterson did a wonderful job at writing a really wonderful middle grade book that is full of real-life things that happen, friends, family, moving on from things, and just learning to live a happy life. And I think that is such a wonderful message to put in a middle grade book, and I really, really enjoyed it. So now for my rating, I rate it 5 out of 5 stars. It was such a wonderful read like I've been talking about for the past few minutes, and I really, really recommend it. So be sure to check out The Einsteins of Vista Point by Ben Guterson. I'm not joking with you guys, I loved it so much, and I highly recommend checking it out. And if you do, be sure to let the author, Ben Guterson, or me know, and I would love to hear you guys' opinions of what you think of The Einsteins of Vista Point. I know this was a pretty short review, and I was kind of repeating myself the whole time of how wonderful a book it is, but that is the truth. It is such a wonderful book, has a wonderful meaning to it, and just an all-around wonderful fantasy, adventure, family book. So I definitely really recommend it. And before I end this episode, here is a quick interview that I had with the author of The Einsteins of Vista Point, Ben Guterson. Hello, Ben. Thank you so much for being here doing this interview with me today. I hope you are having a wonderful day. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you so much. First of all, thank you for sending me your book and allowing me to read and review it here on my podcast. I really, really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and begin. First, when did you know you wanted to be an author? And are there any authors you looked up to and wanted to be like?
You know, I really didn't know that I wanted to be an author until fairly late in life. After college, really several years after college, it wasn't until I was maybe about 30 or so that I first started to write stories. The main thing was when I was younger, and then all through my life, I just loved to read. I was a huge bookworm and still am. I'm just reading all the time. And I always loved to read from the earliest age. So I think by the time I started approaching 30 or so, I thought, I love to read so much. Maybe I'll try to actually, try to start writing books myself. And that's what really got me into it. Of course, it took me many years even after that before I really was able to write a book that anyone would want to read or publish. But definitely didn't start for me until later in my life. When I was younger, I guess I sort of looked up to Roald Dahl because I really loved his books when I was younger, like James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'd come to learn some things over the years about his character and personality that maybe are not so great, but that was one writer that I looked up to when I was younger because his books just seemed to be so much fun, and they were a little bit mischievous and full of rhymes and all kinds of crazy things. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I really like the way he writes his books.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think it was really interesting when you said you were a bookworm and now you are an author. I think that's so wonderful that you made that dream that you had your reality. And now you're an author that so many people around the world, including myself, read and love your books. And I think that is just super cool. And I also agree with you. I do love Roald Dahl as well. And I think he is definitely a wonderful author to look up to and want to be like, because I myself like writing, and I think he is a wonderful person to look up to. So that is awesome. And now moving on to the next question. What inspired you to write The Einsteins of Vista Point? Are there any books you got inspiration from and took little elements from their story and put them into yours?
I was inspired to write The Einsteins of Vista Point many years ago, actually, when I visited a spot. It's on the Oregon and Washington State border above the Columbia River. It's about an hour east of Portland in the state of Oregon. And it overlooks the Columbia River, and it's this huge bluff where there's a beautiful old kind of rest stop. It's called the Vista House, and it was built in about 1918. And it's this beautiful stone building, and it's out. The spot it's at is called Crown Point, and beautiful view of the Columbia River, and you're looking north into Washington State. And I went there once in wintertime, and it was completely deserted. And I was really captivated. I just thought this was just an amazing setting for a story. And it stayed in my mind. And for some reason, I thought, what if a family actually owned this property? And how would that have come about? And why would they have moved out here? Because it's a deserted spot pretty much, very isolated. What would have brought the family out there? And I just started getting this idea that maybe there'd been a family that had some personal tragedy, and they moved out and they bought this place, and it had become dilapidated, and they wanted to repair it or restore it, just like they sort of wanted to restore their own family. So the setting, that stone building, really was the inspiration for the Einsteins of Vista Point. And I also want to incorporate some inspiration from the Swallows and Amazons series, these books that are almost 100 years old now. And it features two brothers and two sisters, and they have all these adventures in England. And I tried to bring some of that flavor to the Einsteins of Vista Point, although my book really focuses more on one character, Zach, whereas the Swallows and Amazons books are really the four kids all together. But I love those books and wanted to bring some of that flavor to the Einsteins of Vista Point.
Wow, that is such an amazing backstory of how you got the inspiration to write your amazing book, The Einsteins of Vista Point. When you were describing that area that you got your inspiration from, I almost felt like I was there. Like you made me feel like I was there in the story, and that is so wonderful. I really enjoyed that. And I think it's wonderful when a story comes from a place that is so random, but the second that one person sees it, they just get the whole story in their mind. I think that is such an incredible thing, and I actually kind of want to go visit there now because it's like I'm visiting a place in your book, which is so cool. And also, I kind of want to check out that book name you said. I don't remember it exactly, but I want to check it out because just from what you said, I can definitely get the vibe of that book. You definitely did a wonderful job at putting little elements of that story. And like I said, I kind of want to go check out that book. So maybe I will after I'm done with this, but that was really interesting. And now the next question. What was the whole process of creating your story from when it was just an idea to the day it got published? Also, how long did it take you to write your book? And did you ever get into any writing slumps?
The process of writing a book, this particular book, or really for me, any book, from getting an idea till the day it's published, is pretty much this. I follow pretty much a regular pattern. I just start accumulating ideas and I create a document, a Word file, and I just gather up all kinds of notes as I think about things over months or even years, about characters and setting and action and all sorts of things. And I just sort of accumulate all these notes and jot them down and steadily gather together a lengthy document filled with all these ideas, and then steadily a story starts to emerge or take place. And then I sort of think about it and create maybe a synopsis and move into an outline, and after a while I'll feel ready to try to turn it into an actual story. And then I write it, I go through drafts, and then eventually share it with my editor, Christy Ottaviano. She's at Hachette, Little Brown Books for Children, and just goes back and forth from there until I sort of hone it and refine it and turn it into a real book. It can take, a minimum of 8 or 9 months and even longer than that to really work through an entire book. And the ideas can germinate over years, actually. I do maybe get into a little bit of slumps every once in a while, but I'm pretty good about sitting down and just continuing to fight through and just keep plugging away with ideas and making sure that I'm staying productive. I don't get into really any prolonged or extended slumps.
That is so wonderful to hear that you don't get into any writing slumps. I know me personally, whenever I do try to write stories, or even if it's like an assignment for school, I tend to get into slumps a lot because I don't know what else to write or exactly where my story is going. And also those tips that you gave of what you do in your writing process, I am definitely going to take from this and put it towards when I write my stories. I don't really write, to publish or anything like that. I just write for fun, but I think those tips are very helpful and I'm definitely going to use those. So thank you so much for those. It was really cool hearing how you create your books and the process that you go through. But now the next question. Are any of your characters inspired by friends or family or really anyone you have a relationship with in your life?
I don't really base any characters in my books on actual people in my life. I try to sort of create them just out of my imagination. And of course, you always bring in elements to your characters from people you know, or even from yourself. You kind of invest your characters with some of these characteristics that you possess or that you see in other people. But I've never really just sort of imported entirely an individual that I know in my real life and sort of planted them in my story. Also, I found that characters tend to take on a little bit of a life of their own. I know that may sound a little bit odd, but I have found that after a while, the characters and their placement in the story and their reactions to other characters and the plot and everything, they start to just sort of assume their own personalities. So it'd be really difficult. I'd feel kind of hemmed in if I felt I had to stick to making them exactly or even close to people that I actually really know.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on that. Like I said earlier, the few times I have written short stories, whether it's for my own enjoyment or if it's for a school assignment, I completely get what you mean, to where when you start creating a character, it's almost like that character has its own brain. And when you're writing a response that they might be saying to another character, it just kind of flows out of you. Like that's what they would say. So I do know what you mean by that when you said that they kind of have their own mind. I completely agree with that and understand that. And moving on to almost the last question, was it challenging or not at all challenging to write a mystery adventure book? I know in mystery adventure books like the ones I read, and especially in your book, The Einsteins of Vista Point, there are a few hints you kind of give throughout the story. And I'm just wondering, how did you manage to make sure they all added up in the end?
I find it very challenging actually to write a mystery or adventure book. It's really hard to write good mysteries, I think. I don't feel that I'm particularly that skilled at doing that or talented in that regard in writing like a sort of a typical mystery where a crime happens at the outset and then you have to, the detective or the character in the story have to solve something. My stories are more mysterious things occur and then the young protagonists in the book try to figure out what's behind all of it. But it is really hard because you want to have clues in your stories that can be reasonably figured out by your readers, but you don't want to make them so easy that readers can spot them right away and then they're frustrated because the characters in the story don't see what the readers, have already figured out. On the other hand, you don't want to make it so hard that it's like no one could ever really actually in real life figure out these clues. So it's very difficult to strike just the right balance. And of course, when you're writing books for younger readers, my books are mostly middle grade, maybe ages 8 to 12, or maybe a little bit older than that. It's hard because you don't want to make the mystery so difficult that kids can't figure it out. But again, you don't want to make it super hard either. So striking that right balance and making sure there's some adventure and mystery in the whole thing and that it's fun for readers and they want to keep turning the pages, it is a real challenge.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I feel like there is a very fine line to where it's too easy for someone to solve or no one will understand it but you. And I think at that time, as a writer, you have to kind of detach yourself from the story and see it from another person's point of view. It's their first time seeing it, which is something very hard for me personally. But I think it is something very helpful to where you can see it from like new eyes almost to know if it's too hard for someone to figure out. But I think you did a wonderful job at putting little hints throughout to where at the end I was like, oh my gosh, he gave the hint like midway through the story. How did I not see it? And I think that was really fun. It was a really fun element to finally figure it out at the end and go back and realize all of the hints that you were giving throughout the story. So I think you did a really wonderful job on that. And now the last question. Can your readers, including myself, be excited about any upcoming books or projects you're working on?
I'm currently at work on the first book in a projected 2-book series. It might be longer than that, but definitely 2 books. The first one will most likely be called The World Famous Number 9, and it will come out in about a year, maybe a little bit less, but roughly a year from now. And it will take place in the largest department store in the world, and I've set it in a large fictional metropolis in southern Siberia. So I hope that's a lot of fun. And it's this ginormous department store. It has everything in the world you could possibly want and all kinds of fun departments and things to do. And really anyone who went there would find a million things to keep them occupied literally for days. And there's a young boy, his name is Xander Olinga, and his grandmother actually owns and runs the department store. And he comes there and there's a mystery. There's a missing plate that used to be an heirloom with the family that has run the store for years and years. And it's gone missing. And there may be some evil characters who are trying to find this missing plate in the department store. And Xander and a new friend he makes are trying to find it before anyone else does. So I hope it's a lot of fun, lots of clues and mystery and adventure. I love all that kind of stuff and codes and so on. And then the second book in that series will come out roughly a year after that. Then I've got another book after that. It's completely unrelated. It takes place in a town kind of like Savannah, Georgia. And there's a mystery there with an art institute and some bad guys trying to steal the last work of art that a famous reclusive artist has been making. And there's a lot more to it. But anyway, those are the next 3 books that I'm working on right now. I love love writing books for kids, and I love incorporating mysteries and codes and lots of puzzles and so on. So I hope people enjoy reading those kinds of books because I certainly enjoy writing them.
That is so amazing that you're working on 3 books you already have planned out. I am so excited for all of them. I would love to read them. And I love that you do mystery adventure type books. Those are so fun for me to read. I love those so much. And I think you do a really good job at differentiating all of your books. The Winter House series books were so much different than the Einsteins of Vista Point. And just from what you have said so far, those other books that you were talking about also sound different, but like a mix kind of, which is a wonderful thing. I love your writing style and your writing type, and I'm really looking forward to reading these future books. And I definitely think that all of your other readers like me are so excited to hear that news. I think that's wonderful, exciting news, and I just really cannot wait for them to come out. So that was the end of this interview with Ben Guterson. Thank you so much, Ben, for answering these questions. I learned so many things that were very fascinating. So thank you so much for taking the time to record your answers. And like I said earlier, thank you so much for sending me your book and allowing me to have this wonderful opportunity. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. So that was the interview I had with Ben Guterson. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know for a fact it was so fun for me to do, and it was really nice to hear all of those things from Ben Guterson about how he wrote his book and the whole process and all of the stuff he went through with writing the Einsteins of Vista Point. So thank you, Ben, so much for doing that interview with me. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you so much, Ben, for sending me your book. You were one of the very first authors to respond to my message to you to say yes, that you were going to send me your book. So I really appreciate it. It means so much to me. So thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, and thank you so much for helping make my dreams a reality. But yeah, guys, this is the end of this week's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be doing another review like this where I review a book sent by an author next month, so stay tuned for that. I'm so excited to record that episode, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys next Friday. Bye, friends!